Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Patrick. I'm one of the service managers here at Care First. I'm going to be running through this presentation with you today, discussing the importance of listening and how that can affect general communication in scenarios. So there is, of course, the ability for you guys to ask questions. So you should have a question section in your control panel on your screens. So you can, of course, submit questions anonymously to me. I'll go through and answer them at the end, the ones that I can do anyway. If there's any that I can't, I will obviously try and come back to you as soon as possible on those. I would also like to just preface on the questions and answers bit at the end. I'm not a counsellor, so if there's any questions that are sort of more relevant for counsellors or appropriate for counsellors to answer, that's something I'll have to come back to you on. I'll sort of jump straight into it. So the presentation is about the importance of listening and communication. Right. So many of you will be able to probably relate to this. I think we all do it as well, to some extent now, in today's day and age of distractions and whatnot. But listening, properly listening, is often taken for granted. Reason being is that it's very easy to be distracted. We've also got a lot of things on our plate a lot of the time, lots of stress. There's lots of things that we need to think about in many ways, so it almost takes away from our ability to listen, and it's very easy to see that sort of bad habit as such of not actually engaging with people. It's an integral part, obviously, of communicating. Like that saying is that we've got two ears and one mouth for a reason. Listening is key to engaging and communicating, building relationships, understanding, and everything that we do in our lives near enough. So being able to properly listen and engage during conversations makes all of it. Also makes it more enjoyable for you and the person or people that you're speaking to. You've probably had it, and you may well have been that person, but speaking to someone who doesn't come across like they're bothered or engaging with you, really often frustrating, and you often find yourself not wanting to share as much information as you would have done if you'd got involved in this conversation, when they just sort of come out with a one word or a short answer, and it's just, you don't really want to carry on talking. So listening is obviously very important, but touching that, why don't we listen? Like I said, we're all probably guilty of it, like whether we like to admit it or not. It might be because we've had something on our mind. There's a long list. So some of the reasons why we might not listen might be that we're occupied in our own thoughts. So touched on a minute ago, with the added pressures of all of the things that we deal with in our day-to-day lives, it's very easy to have our own thoughts. So we might have a problem that we're trying to solve, and then someone might be talking to us, and we might our brain might still be running over, thinking about the problem that we're trying to solve at work, or whether you're running over something that was said earlier on the day, or something not relevant to the conversation you're having in the moment. So you're preoccupied with that, and you're not listening and digesting the information as you should. Again, this isn't a finger pointing at us. We all do it. It's just very easy to do, and these are the reasons why. Being distracted by something else as well, so surroundings. I've said phone because that seems to be a very common one, and often a very common gripe with a lot of people, which is but there'll be times when you'll be able to talk to someone, or you'll be talking to someone, and there might be something like a noise or something else happening in the background or in the foreground that's distracting. So the list could be endless examples of that, but phones is another one as well. I personally find it infuriating when I'm trying to talk to someone and they are on their phone, or even worse, when they get their phone out while you're talking to them. Not want to engage with them. But we've all sort of done it. What happens is in these situations when we're occupied and we're not really listening is that we don't give much back. It's very short-lived answers, very skin deep, bit of a lip service almost when we're just sort of responding to things. Quite a common thing as well for people to do is sometimes people ask, "Well, are you listening?" And the common response will be, "Well, these are the words that you've just said. You just said this." Doesn't mean that we've been listening and digesting information. We've heard the words. It doesn't necessarily mean that we've taken it in and we've engaged in it. So it's a bit of a funny one, but already formulating a response, always an interesting one. So someone might be saying something to you, and again, you might be able to think of a time when you've done this or know that you've done this, but they might be saying something to you, and just in the first couple of words of what they might be saying to you, out of a long sentence or they want to go on, you would have already formulated an answer because you're quick to want to answer and respond to those couple of words that you've just heard. And then what happens is you formulate this answer and this response in your head that you think is fair and just and a good response. And you might be right. But when you're basing it just on the first couple of words, you almost disregard because you get lost in your own mind of responding in a certain way. You disregard what that person then says after that point, and what they say after that point might actually answer your response or alleviate that concern or whatever. But a lot of the time we jump to this conclusion, we've got a good response, and then we stop listening, we disengage, and we wait for them to finish talking, or even worse, we might interrupt, and then it doesn't really slows down that communication back and forth where they're trying to describe something in detail, you're actually coming out with an answer based on a small percentage of that. So that's really common as well. And something conflicting with our own opinion. We've all got our own opinions, and of course it's right you can of course argue your own opinion and always stand by it, which is good. But there is often examples, and I've seen it firsthand, where even though something's conflicting with someone's opinion, they just sort of turn off. They just don't really want to get engaged or bother with entertaining that conversation because it's not interesting to them. It's not something that they agree with. Therefore, they're not really going to light of day. What I always find anyway more effective is if someone does have their own opinion, it's actually more if they engage in that conversation still. Their opinion can often have more weight, and it can be a more enjoyable conversation discussing those opinions open if two people do have conflicting opinions. That list could obviously be much longer. There's just some of the top ones and some of the more generic ones I wanted to go through. There's all sorts of things that disturb us and sort of stop us from properly listening. The list would just be too long. So why is listening so important? So listening is a key part of communicating with others, and it affects us in every single way of our lives. And it's essentially what builds us and what's allowed us, I guess, as a species to develop as well as we have. Is it all boils down to communication, what we're able to describe and engage with people in that sense. So being properly engaged and properly listening helps us to build a stronger sense of community and support with people that we know, friends, family, work colleagues. So we build stronger relationships. It also helps us understand our surroundings and what we are dealing with better in terms of retaining information. So that always helps improve things and so on and so forth. I've sort of said this, but people often hear, so we can say we often hear, but we don't properly listen. So as an example, I would be able to, I wasn't properly listening, I would probably be able to repeat the words that someone said, doesn't mean I was actually engaged in what I was saying. I'm guessing in a good way. So a way to make this change is to practice active listening. Some of you may have heard of active listening before. So what about active listening? It's sort of what it says on the tin. It's making the effort to properly listen and absorb what someone is saying. So clearing your mind of any distractions and being in that moment to take everything in that they're saying. So not just the words, also their body language, their tone, and the way they're saying it. So you can use your sort of senses, whether it's subconsciously or whatever, to be able to really take how this person is communicating with you and take it in the way that they're intending it, or a truthful way that has been described. But active listening isn't an easy thing for us to do. Like I said, there's plenty of things for us now to be not actively listen. You do have to make a conscious effort, bringing it in and almost make it a bit of a habit. But again, like it's not going to be easy to do constantly all the time, and in every single conversation. That might be a little bit unrealistic. Just to be aware of the two differences is a good start, because then you'll know when you're just hearing things, and you'll know when you're actively listening, and you'll find that you enjoy actively listening more because you get the positive feedback from people, and it makes it easier for you as well. So active listening can help you. Again, a bit similar to the list of distractions. This list could be a lot longer, but I just want to take the top 9 ones as well, as to how active listening can help. It can help you learn and understand things better. And these are all applicable, and this one in particular are applicable in both personal and professional work life. So in a professional scenario, for example, you're given specific instructions, or you're trying to learn something new, by being there in the moment and engaging. I'm sure we all do in a professional sense. It helps you understand things better. But also, not only that, it helps you to realise what you don't understand better. So just by understanding the process and what someone's describing to you, there's an element of it where you're a bit not sure. Just like it will allow you to ask the right questions, which will then help you understand, what the process is better, and also help you get information more. Again, in a social environment, if someone's saying something to you about something over the weekend, or a relationship, or whatever there, being able to better understand and learn what emotions they're feeling, what they're expressing, and why they're expressing it, will allow you to be a better socially with them. On to the next point, you become better at socializing. A bit like I said, people appreciate the conversations they have with you more. So, like I said, I mean, how many of you ever spoken to someone on the phone, and it's just a bit disenfranchising, really? You didn't really value that conversation. It's just a bit disheartening. So you become better at social. People value more. They'll come to you more often, listen, and you feel like bouncing off you rather than just, I guess. Again, so that also leads me on to the next point. So better sympathise with friends and family. So my example just then about a friend maybe talking about relationship. When you're properly listening and engaging with them, you'll be able to feedback, ask the right questions, sympathise, see their body language, hear their tone of voice, and know how they're feeling, whether they're feeling anger or upset or sadness, and then that will you tailor your response to fit the conversation. So you can build stronger relationships, make people more valued. You can improve on your problem-solving skills. Sort of relates back to the first point about learning and understanding processes and things better. Someone's coming to you, say in a work scenario, and people come to you saying, okay, well, we've got this problem, that's because of X, Y, and Z, and you've got another person saying that's going to be for this problem, X, Y, and Z. If you're taking it all on board and digesting it and understanding it and asking questions to fully understand it better, you'll get a bigger picture. It'll be easier to digest, and you will be able to formulate a solution easier. Whereas obviously, if the opposite would happen and you weren't properly listening, it would be a lot harder, a lot more frustrating to resolve any issue. Again, absorbing information better. So you'll be able to retain information better by being engaged. I think we've all probably done it when presentation, ironically, where it might have got longer, it might be quite on the long side, and then towards the end you start hearing, and then you start thinking about other things that are going on in your life. You'll be able to think back on it, you'll be able to retain the information of when that started, and you'll be able to retain that information better if you're engaged. But towards the end of the presentation, where you became a bit disengaged, perhaps, started thinking about other things, you probably realise that you remember that as well as the first part. Okay, so how to practice active listening? Like I said, it's not something that can be done all of the time. It's not easy. It doesn't come naturally to us because of all the distractions that we have. Like I said, as soon as you are aware and you recognise that you'll be able to tell when you are actively listening or when you're just hearing things, and you'll start wanting to practice active listening more. That's the first step. So how to practice active listening? Concentrate on what is being said. So you need to try and clear your mind of stresses and other things that are concerning you. Don't be distracted on your phone. Don't be distracted by other things, and don't formulate that response early, like we said in previous slides. Now that's quite a hard task. It's not easy to not be distracted. However, it will become easier the more you practice it, the more you are able to do it. So try and clear your distraction, clear your mind, and just be like that is the only thing that really matters at that moment. Show that you're engaged with that person. So when that person's speaking, you look at them, nod at them occasionally. Show that you're sort of understanding what they're saying whilst they're talking to you. Otherwise, if you're not really showing any interest on their phone, they're not showing that they're engaging and they're listening. So you just that person who's speaking to you, divulging information and speaking with you. So make sure that they're aware that you are still on board with them and engaged. Wait for that person to finish speaking before responding. Don't interrupt. Tempting as it is sometimes when someone says something and you want to almost respond to that, it sort of goes back to formulating a response early as well. I realise a lot of people formulate responses because they're passionate about what they want to answer. To get that across, they might interrupt. Really important that happen. Some people might talk on for quite a while, so there might be a natural lull in the conversation where you can start talking, but talking over and interrupting. There you go. What you want to do is you want to encourage that person to be able to articulate themselves and feel like it's their part before you respond. Going back to the response side of things as well, having early, there's sometimes an element of how you could have a response and you try to remember and keep track of this response, that when that person has stopped talking, you've got it defined in your head. Just if you don't formulate a response before they finish speaking, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have one. If anything, you'll be able to respond in a much clearer way and demonstrate a better understanding of what they said. So let them finish speaking, and yes, don't interrupt. want to get all the information before you respond. Just a very pragmatic way of dealing with it. Summarize your understanding. It's not always applicable, but someone's explaining something to you, and it's quite an in-depth information. Just to at the end of it, just to explain like how you've taken that, how you understand it. Not only does it buy you a bit of time if you do want to then ask a question or anything like that, but also gives them a chance to say, well, hang on, no, maybe you haven't got that quite right, or maybe I haven't explained this properly, and it gives that chance to carry on going like that. And yeah, you can apply it to personal and professional scenarios. So try it at work. I think we're more likely to do it at work and be more engaged in conversation, because obviously it's our jobs and it's what we do, it's our living, and we don't want to. But on the social side, on the personal side of things, it's more likely that we do slip into some bad habits. Start trying to practice it in both scenarios, and you'll find it working better and a bit more prepared for you. So there's a bit of information there. There is, like I said, there's long lists of benefits, hints, tips, of ways you can improve on your listening skills. It's all out there on the internet. I've put some useful links that I use, just which you have to access to on the recordings. One thing I didn't mention as well is that we recorded this webinar, and you'll be able to access the recording shortly after. So yes, yeah, some useful links for you as well. So for those of you who are aware, I would imagine most of you are, who are aware of Care First and who we are and what we do. For those of you who don't, I just wanted to put a bit of an introduction there for you. So Care First, so we are a professional counselling information and advice service, and we offer support for issues covering home or work issues. Could be the same at the moment when we work from home. So we have a counselling helpline that's available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So you can call that line. You get the number from your HR department or from your lifestyle portal. You can call that line and speak with a counsellor. There's no reception or anything to get through. You'll be put straight through to a counsellor, and you'll be able to discuss any issues that we will be dealing with, and the counsellor will be able to feed. You can have that sort of support through there. So support in the moment, so whether that's you call up and counsellor and any special sort of concerns and issues that you're wanting to deal with about. But there's also the contracted telephone counselling sessions if there's an issue that is, whether it's appropriate for you to have additional structured counselling sessions on a regular basis. That sort of option there as well, if it's appropriate. The information specialist services is not, it works 8 till 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Friday. So the information specialist, you can call up the line and speak with an information specialist. They're all trained within the Citizens Advice Bureau. So if regarding legal information, employment information, childcare, you name it, there's a whole list of things that you can call up and speak about that. There's also the online counselling via the Lifestyle website. So the Lifestyle website, you'll be able to get the login credentials if you have it through your HR department. So you'll be able to go on there. There's a huge range of material touching on an array of topics, which might be a good starting point if you'd rather do that first, and you can get sort of helpful information there. A lot of people do use that as a starting point and see if it helps with calling the counselling line. But equally, if you just want to call the line, just we also offer management consulting advice for managers. So if there's any particularly difficult questions need to be staff or building poor work, there's that sort of support there as well. The whole service is fully confidential, of course. So if you call up the counsellor, we will never share any identifiable information with the organisation with any third parties. There is, of course, there's only 3 reasons why we would ever break, and then very circumstances which I'm but they are whether there's a threat to life of another person, whether there's anything regarding child protection, vulnerable adult issues, or whether there's any risk to security of the organisation. So yes, so that's the end of the presentation. If you do have any questions, if you go away after this and you have any questions that you want to ask me, then please feel free to email info@care-first.co.uk. As I sort of a minute ago as well, this will be recorded and it will be uploaded onto our website, and you'll receive a link and follow it too as well. So yes, I'm going to just have a look at some questions if I've got any, and I'll start in a second. Yeah, so I had a question. So can you send further details, including the recording, please? Yes, that will come up to you shortly after this. I think there's a follow-up email that goes out by GoToWebinar, and you'll be able to receive that. I've had a few issues with the sound, so apologies if you haven't heard it, or hopefully the recording. Hopefully the recording will be okay, but so I think from what I can see, we've had some issues with the recording and the sound. So apologies for that. What I'll have to do is I'll have to re-listen to the recording and make sure the sound's okay on there. And if you want to, it will have to be run through that as well. What's your views on taking notes while listening, especially if they are raising lots of points? This might impact eye contact. Especially online, it might make the person feel like you're not listening. Yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned especially online as well, because it is very intense with the sort of the Skyping that we're having to do at the moment. But absolutely, taking notes is very important. It actually, although you might break eye contact, it shows that you're taking it on board and you're writing down the key notes. Also, as well, help you with your response because it will show a good understanding. So yeah, no, absolutely. Making notes is fine. Wouldn't necessarily be in a social scenario, I don't think, but definitely in a professional circumstance. I can't see the phone number for Care First. So some organisations have slightly different numbers for the support line. So the reason why we don't share our sort of our generic line, because it might not be applicable to you, because we have obviously a lot of people on here. So I would suggest getting in touch with your HR department just to make sure that the number that you get is correct. Can you send some details in the recording? Yes. Yeah, so what tips do you have for chairing meetings? Is a good practice to jot people and stuff? Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of relevant to the question that was asked a minute ago as well. Jotting down information is really good. There's often, if you're chairing a meeting and it's a big meeting, there's often a lot of points raised, and it's good to address all those and at least take note of them. So yes, no, it is good practice to do that. Are there any resources for healthcare professionals for learning more about active listening? So specifically for healthcare professionals, I would imagine so. It's not something I would have accessed. What I've taken and done sort of a bit of research, I would definitely have a look. I would imagine them out there. So yes. Are there techniques to stop interrupting conversations you can't retain? So I think that sort of is sort of related to, I guess, to notes. So if you're talking about in a professional environment where there is complex and lots of information coming across, it is good notes. If there's ever a moment where someone's explaining or having a long sort of chat, and they're sharing a lot of information, and you're not sure on something, it is good just to make a little note just to remind yourself of something that you're not understanding necessarily, so you can ask the question. Of course, unless when there's sort of scenarios like that, most people are, if they're aware, and they most of them will be aware that they are describing something, a lot of the time they would say, if you have any questions at any point, just at that point that's fine. When I'm talking about interrupting, it's more like a conversation that's been had. But obviously, if they're explaining something, preface it by saying, please do ask a question, then go for it. How can you monitor if you're improving your active listening? That's a good question. I think that you realize in yourself how your conversations would improve. You would feel like you're probably a bit more of a communicator in the sense that you find yourself engaging and asking more probing and relevant questions, and it becomes a bit more difficult for you, and it doesn't become an active. It doesn't become like you have to really make a. But no, I think in terms of like a stats monitor of how you're improving active listening, I don't think there's anything you can do it, but I think you'll realise that comes through. Is there an optimum time for active listening? Is there anything longer than 50 minutes too long? I don't think there's an optimum time for active listening. I mean, the idea is that you can practice active listening for as long as you can. I guess the question might be like, how long can our attention spans go for? But that's the difficulty, and that's what I was saying earlier on, is that when things go on for quite a while, it becomes easier to be distracted. So it depends on how we are with ourselves in terms of practicing active listening, and how well our attention spans. Okay, so I've rattled through and I've answered all the questions that I've had. So again, apologies if the sound quality has not been great. I'll check the recording and I'll send that all out to you as well. You'll get the link, and it will go onto the Lifestyle website. I'm going to finish up now. So thank you very much for attending. I hope you'll have a wonderful weekend. And any questions, again, email info@carefirst.co.uk, and I'll be more than happy to come back to you. All right, thank you. Cheers.